So in part 2 of the exponent laws, I'll show you another 3 laws of exponents that you can use to simplify your life. And actually with these 3 in part 2 and with the 3 from part 1, you will have enough laws to be able to do everything you could possibly do with exponents. So let's start with the first law in part 2. So in part 1 we said 1, 2, 3, so I'm going to say 4, 5, 6 in part 2. So the fourth law you should know is the fraction law. So if you have, it's actually a distribution law. So if you have x over y, some fraction, to the power of a, then this is the same thing as saying x to the power of a divided by y to the power of a. And so if I'm going to do a little example of why this is true. If I have 2 divided by 3 to the power of 3, this is the same thing as saying 2 over 3 times 2 over 3 times 2 over 3. And that's just like saying 2 times 2 times 2 over 3 times 3 times 3, because that's how we multiply fractions, top with top, bottom with bottom. And that's just 2 cubed over 3 cubed. So 2 over 3 cubed is 2 cubed over 3 cubed. Rule number 5. Rule number 5 is distribution again. If I have x times y to the power of a, this is the same thing as saying x to the a times y to the a. And my example of this is 2 times 3 to the power of 3. It's the same thing as saying 2 times 3, 2 times 3, and 2 times 3. And that's just the same thing as saying 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 3, because the order of multiplication doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you multiply first. So this is just the same thing as saying 2 cubed times 3 cubed. And finally, the sixth law is a little bit trickier. If you have some base to the power of a negative exponent, well, this is the same thing as saying 1 over x to the power, let's get rid of that. It's the same thing as saying 1 over x to the power of a. Now, you might be wondering what happened. Well, actually what happened is this x is actually over 1. And a negative exponent means take the reciprocal of whatever was there. So we had x over 1, and the reciprocal of x over 1 is 1 over x. And of course this x was to the power of negative a, so in the bottom it'll be to the power of positive a. It's also true that if you have 1 over x to the negative a, this is also equal to x to the positive a, right? So if you have a negative in the denominator, then you can still bring it to the numerator. So an example of this is if I have 2 to the minus 4, well, this is the same thing as saying 1 over 2 to the 4. And a slightly more complicated example using law number 6 and law number 4. So let's give a second example, example 2. If I have 3 over 2 to the power of minus 2, this is the same thing as saying 2 to the power of 3 to the 2. So the negative sign makes me flip my exponent, my fraction, and then I distribute the 2 into the brackets, and I get 2 squared over 3 squared.